Today we're working on a Ford small block Windsor, a 302 to be exact, and we are installing our connecting rods onto some new pistons. So I'm going to show you one method of doing that, as well as some things to watch out for and pay attention to. First off, your pistons are directional. If you look at them here, they have a small notch cut out on one side. That would be the front, as well as having an F cast in the front of them. F stands for front, obviously. Your connecting rods are directional as well. If you take a look at them here, you have one edge with a larger radius cut into it, and one edge that has more of a straight cut edge on it. Those have to meet your crankshaft in a certain direction. So your edge with the radius cut in it is made to fit the outer edges of the journal, while the straight cut edge goes towards the center of the journal, where the two connecting rods will be close to each other. The method we're using today to install the wrist pin, so we're going to use this propane torch to heat up the connecting rod to expand it just enough until you can press the wrist pin in by hand. I've seen some people get your piston set up in a jig with a stop so you don't push your pin through too far. I've also seen other people just freehand it and trust in yourself that you're good enough to hold the rod centered as well as hold the pin perfectly centered. Trick that I've picked up, because I don't trust myself just enough to do it completely by freehand, is taking a little Allen wrench, set it on top of the wrist pin, and then when you set the pin in, you hold it tight on the Allen wrench. You get one just the right size so it centers the connecting rod inside the piston. And then when you just push your pin through, you make sure to get that perfectly centered as well. And that should leave you in just about the right spot where your rod is centered in the piston. So we've got our piston set up with our wrist pin in it. The wrist pin as well has been sitting in the freezer all morning to, in theory, make it contract a little, which should help with installation into the connecting rod. Getting it centered, the pin centered, and the rod pushed against my Allen wrench. This is what I was talking about, using the Allen wrench as a spacer, because you obviously want your pin flush centered in the piston, but you also want your rod centered in the piston. So when you push the pin in, just use your fingers obviously to get it straight, as straight as you can feel by there, and then the Allen wrench acting as a spacer, you just hold it tight to the one side, squeezing the Allen wrench in, and that'll leave you with a pretty even gap as long as you get the right size spacer of whatever sort you're going to use. And then you're centered enough for all practical purposes. If you do mess this up and you get it, offset too far to one side or something, it's not the end of the world as long as you do have access to a press. I did mess up one of them. I was able to stick it in a press and just get, a couple chunks of scrap aluminum I had laying around on either side between the press and the piston to try and be a little nicer on it, and push the pin through, the 1/8 of an inch or whatnot it had to go. Be careful doing that. It was possible to crack the piston or gall up any of the surfaces in there. That's the whole idea behind heating it up, so you can slide it in by hand, that you don't put any pressure or gall anything up.